So we are here with the awesome Katie Bindrup, who is an icon in education law and really a trailblazer in so many respects, but also a very successful trust and estates attorney.
Yeah.
With your husband. And I've heard your name so many times, and it's been nice to be able to get to know you a little bit. And we were just talking before we started about how we both serve in the temple together, which is super fun.
Yeah.
Here in Vegas.
Best job we've ever had.
Yeah. You and your husband show up on Tuesday mornings.
I
love it. And I'm impressed. You guys seem like you have it all together. You got multiple offices throughout the valley, and you're doing cool stuff.
Yeah, I'm glad we have everyone fooled. I guess it's just one step at a time. But yeah, I mean, it's been the result of keeping our heads down and doing a lot of hard work for, and after you work hard for about 10 years, then
it starts
things
to hit.
Get a little bit easier. Yeah, for sure.
Well, it's interesting because many people will be satisfied with doing a trust and estates practice successfully. And I want to talk about how incredible Nevada is for that stuff, and we can get to that. But a lot of people will be satisfied with that. But you have, I think, a similar energy to me in the respect that when you see an injustice, you want to push against it. Is that kind of what drove you to do education and what you've been doing with special needs?
Yeah, absolutely. And it really was just on my own experience, right? So David and I have 5 children, and our second oldest has Apraxia, which is a speech motor disorder. And so, and actually when she was almost, just before she turned 3, I had twin boys. So we had a lot going on, and it was right about the time that she got diagnosed.
Yeah.
And we knew that her speech was off, that she was struggling to speak, but we didn't realize the depth of what that looked like. And so the more that we learned, and then the more that I participated in getting her services through the public schools, I just realized there was so much that I didn't know as an attorney. And I just didn't want any other parent to go into a meeting feeling like that. Because even, as an attorney, I thought, okay, how hard is this? I can go in, I can advocate. I know how to do that. I know how to argue it. But arguing for your own child and seeing, their struggles just turns it to it just opened my eyes to a type of compassion that I don't think I would have had except for having that experience with that child.
Yeah.
So, and then it was just wanting that all to not be just for the benefit of our own family, but so that other families could understand and realize. And I mean, to this day, I still get texts and emails and direct messages where I am just shocked by the things that are going on. Sometimes I feel like, is this basic? Isn't this things that people already know? And there's so much that's still unknown.
Broken.
Yeah,
Very
absolutely.
Broken. Yeah. Well, and so in that experience, I mean, you're already carrying the weight of being a mom that's concerned about a child who has unique struggles. I mean, every parent worries about their child's struggles. But that, on top of all this other education stuff and all the stress of making sure that she's getting the education that she needs to be able to develop and grow, what was it that helped you kind of push through that? What were some of the things that...
Well, I think my faith, right? First of all, I think faith has a lot to do with it, and just my strong belief in our core family unit and feeling that sense of responsibility, right? That every parent feels for a child, and feeling like she was my responsibility, and if I didn't help her, no one would. The thing with apraxic children, just to generalize a little bit, a lot of times they struggle with speech for their whole lives. A lot of them use AAC devices and things like that. And I just had this, as stereotypical as it could be, this burning knowledge that she was going to overcome this. And it felt like I was seeing something that nobody else saw, right? So at times I felt a little crazy, but I just knew if I kept pushing through, I knew she could overcome it. And to a large extent, she has. She actually now is in a private school. It just because, and we had wanted to make that change just for a number of personal belief reasons. But she wasn't able to do that because of the limitations that she had. And now she is able to be in, a completely general classroom and really has overcome a lot of those things that were holding her back that didn't have to, right? But it took understanding the law. And then not only that, being able to have, I think, the courage to stand up for what her rights were and enforce those. And that was obviously a much bigger challenge than I had anticipated.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, and I feel the light. I get chills just listening to you talk about this, how powerful this is. I mean, this is incredible maternal power stuff that you would step in and protect her and help her. And and not just shield her, but actually empower her to become the better version of herself. That's incredible.
Yeah. Well, I think if you remember, like we kind of connected during COVID, just with some of those same issues. I don't even remember how I originally connected to you, but it was something about special ed, and we suddenly were connected, and just seeing kind of those injustices that were being done. And I think I realized too, it took me a while to find my cadence in all of it. And there's still things to this day that I'm learning. And, we always say that's why you practice law. We don't know it, we're practicing it. But when I was able to put into place the plan that I had for her and get the school district to listen to me and put that into practice, the changes that we saw in her speech were so incredible that it just made me realize those resources are there, and we just need to find a way to better utilize them. And then they can do what they were there to accomplish from the beginning, right? Which is get that early intervention in, or meet kids where they are and help them really progress to the point that then they can go on to bless the lives of other people and to be contributing members of society and all those other things that we want for all of us.
Yeah, kids are meant to change the world. And I think those with struggles or difficulties actually have even greater potential to do that.
Absolutely.
As they overcome, it drives them to more. So you could have stopped there. You could have just helped her and then been done. But you didn't want anyone else to struggle with this.
Well, yeah. And so I think what really happened was it was kind of a combination of I was still learning a lot about special education, buying textbooks and literally reading textbooks at a rate I'd never read them in law school or my undergraduate, just because I had such a natural interest in this and could apply it to a situation with my child, right?
Sure.
I would go to conferences, I would do all these things. And it got to a place where I would have so many people ask me for advice or wonder what to do and then get kind of lost in all of the details of it that I started kind of writing down as I was going through the process with another family member. Just kind of wrote out the process as I was going through it, what I was doing, how I was doing it. And then that turned into one of my first guides on how to get an independent educational evaluations. And what I wanted to do was create it in a way that anyone could look at it and follow it. I think so much of the training that we see today is not the step by step. It's more like the big idea of how things work. And that's where parents and even advocates and educators get lost. So by taking it back down to, okay, after we do this, now we're going to send this letter. Here's what you want to say in the letter. Here's, the main points that we're going to make in the letter.
Awesome.
And giving them the power then to use that in other arenas. And I mean, we've seen some amazing results. I remember early on, a parent contacting me and saying that that no child in that district had ever received an independent educational evaluation before. And so then their child was one of the first. That, another parent contacted me and said that because of the vision therapy they've been able to access through my resources, through learning the law. And the neat thing about it is it's them learning it for themselves and then applying it. They were able to get the confidence where they were able to get their child services that they'd never even considered before.
That's incredible.
And so just having that kind of reach, I just think is amazing. It's such a blessing and such an opportunity.
Yeah, that's remarkable. How many people do you think you've helped, and how long have you been doing this?
I don't know. I hesitate. So I've been actively doing it for about 2.5 years now. I would say, subscriber wise, I've had thousands of subscribers, and I think I try to share enough information too that if you don't subscribe to I have a program where if you subscribe, you get access to all my guides for, it's $18 for the year. But if for some reason you're unable to do that or you're not quite ready to take the step, I try to give enough information and just kind of day-to-day posts and things like that where people can still gain a lot of knowledge. Yeah, and just start to understand and see that process a little bit different. I think it's one of those areas that easily gets stereotyped as to kids, parents and kids just wanting everything done for them. And the whole purpose is to build that independence and help them become independent. So it's not a perfect process, but it's the process we have right now that's available to us. And it literally can change lives if people know how to use it.
No, I agree. We usually get involved when a parent has done their best, gotten as far as they can, and then they need an attorney to jump in and do a due process complaint. Do you think that parents generally... Do you think they can figure this stuff out on their own usually?
I think for the most part, because I think parents that are put in this position usually have children with extensive medical needs, just to kind of generalize it, but they're used to being resourceful and they've had to figure out a lot of things on their own already. And they really are the best expert on their child. But I think knowing the law helps us know what we can and also what we can't do, right? It's not just a carte blanche to get whatever services we want.
Right.
There's also restrictions on that, and there's things that carry through. And, there's been those moments that have kind of stung of, okay, so this is not something I'm going to be able to accomplish through this, right? And so it's not, just whatever you want, and it's all geared towards that independence. But I think a lot of times parents can do a lot of the steps themselves. But, I have to say, even I hired an attorney at one point because I just needed someone's voice that wasn't my own to go to the school district and remind them that I was serious about this. So I think there's a place for all different types of advocacy.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's wisdom in that. I obviously, one of the rules for attorneys is don't advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There are blind spots. There are things you don't see. But the ability to zealously advocate for somebody else, like a parent can for a child or like an attorney can for a client, I mean, it's a powerful tool. It's a very, very effective thing. So you've done this for 2.5 years. It's been an incredible process. You've blessed a lot of people's lives. Do you feel like there's any particular areas that are more sensitive than others for people or more difficult to navigate?
I think I'll say this, one of my favorite things to talk about, and the reason is because I think it's so underserved, is the idea of extracurricular activities. So I always get a lot of feedback on extracurricular activities. And remember that extracurricular activities, there's tests that courts use to determine whether or not it's covered under an IEP. But we've got kids that are excluded from school dances, from football games, from athletics, from music programs.
It's like the best part of high school.
Exactly. And those are where they really gain their social skills. And a lot of those activities are motivating factors. I mean, for my own typical children as well, they're motivating factors to, I want to get my homework done because I want to make sure I can go to football practice, right? Yeah. And so there is a place for kids who have IEPs in those environments, but a lot of times they're not fully developed. They're not looked into. There's just too much else that's going on. And so, as I've talked about extracurricular activities, I've had parents contact me and say, I just want my daughter to be able to go to the school dance. She really wants to go to the dance. Or I have a son that wants to participate in theater. Now, there will always be those naysayers who will say, well, your kid doesn't get to get the starring role or things like that. And it's not about that. It's about giving them the opportunity to participate like their typical peers, right? And so it's not that we're asking for special permission, but it is an opportunity for them to participate, to feel part of a group, and to get that sense of community. And so that's one of my favorite things, I think, to talk about, just because so many people are unaware that that's available to them. And I think it's such a good, like you said, it's such a good almost reward, right, for families to see that they can be involved in those experiences as well.
Yeah, that's the prize, is that connection, that community, the full integration, unity with other people around projects, things like that. That's so valuable.
Absolutely.
So do you think that the current system is actually capable of supporting the needs of children with everything that's changing?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? I mean, I have my own concerns about the political stuff that's going on, just because I worry about everything going back to the states. I don't think the states are as geared for it as we would like them to be.
No, I'm a fan of getting rid of the Department of Education.
Oh, really? That's funny. And I feel like I'm pretty conservative, but on the other hand, I'm not as much of a fan of that because I worry about that oversight. I've had enough dealing with the state that I'm like, seriously, now they're going to be in charge of it. No offense.
No, that's fair.
I just want to make sure everyone has the training that they need, right? And so I worry that then things can be too isolated, like they are a lot of times in special education now, right? When there's a decision, when there's a settlement agreement made, no one knows what that child got. You can't find out what other kids are getting, what kind of services they're getting.
No transparency.
No transparency at all. And so I worry about even the transparency from state to state, that's going to change a lot. So that's my concern.
That's a legitimate point.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's pros and cons to every situation. I think that educators as a whole want to help kids, obviously. That's why they're in that. And whether it's administration or students, but sometimes their hands are tied, or they think their hands are tied, right? And so they're not sure what to do. I don't know that the funding, if everyone did, if everyone got the services they were entitled to, if the funding could withstand it. But I also feel like our job as parents and advocates, and even educators, is not to worry about that. Our job is to provide the services. And then the districts are going to need to take that extra step to find that funding. I think there's more funding available to them, right? We know that they don't use all the federal funds that they're supposed to get. And so there's obviously some more lobbying and things that need to be done on that level. But for us, I feel like the best way we advocate is by enforcing the standards that are already there. And then that can hopefully trickle up, and then districts and states can worry about how to get the additional funds.
Yeah, I think that's wise. I always envisioned a future where the laws would still apply.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I spent time back in D.C. working for a U.S. senator, and he was involved with the ADA regulations and things that have been extended down to FAPE and IDEA and things. And as long as those protections stay,
Absolutely.
you know.
Yeah.
But I get your point. The transparency, the uniformity, that's an important thing.
Yeah.
Well, so you and I had a similar experience around the same time as well, where I think we both got truancy officers sent to our house.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, we had this weird shakedown by the school district.
Here,
I mean,
here in
it's
Clark
sorry,
County,
it's just what it is.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah. And I mean, I think the thing is stuff like that, I guess that's where the lawyer in me comes out. Like, I don't mind arguing with anybody. I think the older I get, the less I want to argue with people, but I still can if I have to, right?
Sure.
And maybe I'm just finally maturing a little bit. But I think
Retaliation, though, like if we're both filing IEP cases
Mhm.
against the school district, and then the truancy officers show up at our house.
Yes, with non-truant children.
Yes.
It does
That
feel
are
like
getting good grades.
Yes, it feels like a little bit of a shakedown, right? And so for us, I think we were able to kind of laugh it off. But I can see how that would be so intimidating for families, right?
Oh.
You think about families who have illegals, right? And just that fear that they live in on top of them not being able to access the education for their kids. And I remember when we had our first big win with my daughter from one of our first due processes, I turned to my husband after and said, okay, but what about that mom that works 3 jobs, that isn't even home after school because she can't, and English is her second language? How will that child with apraxia or with a hearing difficulty or with ADHD ever be able to get through the system, right? And I felt like it took everything I had to get through it. And we've been very blessed with the opportunity, for my kids to be in a 2-parent household. So there's lots of help at home. There's lots of resources we're able to give our children.
2 parents that are both attorneys.
Yes. And even then I felt like I was just grasping at straws trying to figure it out. And so that's really been my motivating factor, is thinking about those parents that just need that step up. And even if it's just moving that needle forward a little bit, right? Getting their child a little bit more time and speech, a little bit more services, having them go to ESY when maybe they've been told they don't qualify, but no one ever went over the rules of it with them. Those are the things that I want people to see, and understanding that there are tests out there. There's ways that we look at these. There's factors that we weigh and consider. And the better they know those, the more it can take the emotion out and just help them get on a level playing field.
Yeah, and have the room to breathe.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's so difficult. Well, and it's interesting too, because I question, the reason I ask about, do you think this current system is sustainable? Anytime a system, to me, it feels like the school district has, in general, and then also specifically here in Clark County, has had some pretty significant mission drift. It's no longer focused on actually helping the children. And this is a complaint I think everybody has voiced. It's more about the bureaucracy. It's more about the entrenchment of the administration. It's not about the children. In fact, we had a wonderful school board member who, she has schools named after her. She's won awards. This is back when Clark County School District was one of the best in the nation, and now it's the worst. And she said she attended meetings for several months, and not once was the idea of children raised. School board meetings, not even talking about kids. So whenever a system treats children like numbers, or doesn't even talk, it just ignores them, and suffers that type of mission drift. What do you think the answer is to fixing that? Like, I have my own ideas, I'm sure you've heard, but what do you think?
I think to me, it's like, get back to the basics, right? Kind of that concept that knowledge is power, and when we kind of write things back, then we're able to focus on what actually should be done. And I do think that a lot of school districts are administration heavy. And I think the ways that they can overcome that too is being better educated in the law. What IEP trainings are they doing? How are they learning? How are they teaching their staff? Because as you know, there's so much money. I mean, as much as we like to make money in this arena, it could be better served, right, if kids just knew what they were entitled to in the beginning, and that they spent the money in that way instead.
That's the goal, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
To work ourselves out of a job.
Absolutely. But I think the thing is when we go back to those basics, and it's not what we think or what I feel or what you feel or, about a certain child, but it's like, okay, but what does the law say? The law says that in the least restricted environment, right, if we want a child to be in the classroom, we should consider the impact it has on other students, right? That is one of the factors. And a lot of people say, oh, that's just completely ignored. No, that should be a factor.
Sure.
But there's also other factors at play, right? And so as we go through those factors and we take people back I just think it helps take the emotion out. And I think a lot of times as attorneys, that's what we're geared to do, right? Is, okay, let's take a step back. Let's apply the facts to the law, to the tests that have already been set out, and see where this all meets up. And when we take the emotion out, then we're really able, I mean, as ironic as it is, I think, to better serve children, because it'll put the focus back on what are those tenets? How do we decide where children belong?
Sure. Yeah, it's very important. And how do we empower them to be able to change the world like you've been doing with
Absolutely.
children?
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
Powerful. Okay, so the school district needs help. Get back to the basics. Be focused on power. Do you on knowledge is power? Do you think that there are new technologies or techniques that are going to be better suited to help children with special needs than what the school district is capable of offering?
I mean, I think with AI and things like that, I think that we'll be able to, I hope it'll take some of the pressure off of, especially educators, right?
Yeah.
Who are kind of bearing this middle ground of being stuck between administration and students, and hopefully help kind of automate more the system of IEPs, of coming up with goals, of being able to say, okay, this is the student, here's their history, help me come up with some goals for the student that are more workable. So I hope that we'll get out of the paperwork as much and then be able to focus more on the actual teaching and things like that. You know, the surprising thing that I keep hearing, I guess the naysayers or the critics say about advocacy is, you know, all you're doing is making teachers want to leave the field, right? And I get that feedback a lot. Like, you're the type of parent that teachers don't want in their classroom. And I'm like, okay, but all I'm doing is saying, here are the, first of all, I give really good Christmas gifts, okay? So I don't think that should be fair, okay? I'm very generous. But I think that how am I suddenly the scapegoat when all I'm saying is, hey, this is the rule for what you're supposed to do in this situation.
Sure.
Let's take it back to the rules, right?
Yeah.
And instead, like you said, it gets lost. Schools drift away from that. And I think if schools came in, you know, you think about it from the other side of that table. If schools came in and said, here is the standard in our state for whether your child, how much time your child spends in the general ed classroom compared to a special ed classroom.
Sure.
And they went through those standards with them, I think both sides would be able to see that a lot better and make better choices, right?
Sure.
And so what I hope is it helps those resources become more available to everyone, and that we're not wasting so much time stuck in our feelings and kind of get back to what actually controls those decisions.
Yeah, I think that's wise. I mean, the transparency on the rules, the framework, the tenets, like you said, is very valuable. Anybody can now pick up even a free version of ChatGPT and say, is my child entitled to this?
Absolutely.
And there's this immediate response, yes or no, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe.
And you can even ask chat, right? Like, tell me more about this. What does this word mean? What does this acronym mean? Why are they telling me this? And it really, I think it's an amazing tool for parents and families to just get more help.
Yeah, for sure. And then if, as with most things that require expertise and experience,
Absolutely.
reach out to somebody like you or get more insight from education.
Yeah, there's still a place for it, for sure, for that gathering. But I hope it helps families feel more confident in their own ability to advocate.
I love that. So obviously parents are concerned about their kids, and parents also are concerned about making sure that they're able to plan for the future. And you and your husband, David, have advised a number of folks on how to make sure they take care of their wealth, mitigate or protect against government overreach, or not paying too much in taxes, or carrying that burden. Why did you choose Nevada? I mean, you're from California. I know he grew up here, but
so my husband was born and raised in Nevada. He's a third generation Las Vegan.
Okay.
And he always had his eye. Yes, he's one of those. And he always had his eye on doing estate planning.
Okay.
And that was mostly because he's a saver. And so he wanted to make sure, he liked the idea of strategizing and helping families preserve their wealth, right, for future generations. And so his whole practice has been geared on that, on efficiency, right, and estate planning. And it's similar to what we want to do in special education, is make things efficient. Like, what is the cheapest way that you can best accomplish whatever those goals are, right? And so by doing that, you help families plan. You help them see how they can benefit future generations. And I mean, you know, one of the neatest things you can do is, I mean, if you've got a child, especially in special needs families, who is going to be dependent maybe on federal resources, you can plan now so that you can still help supplement those resources and help take a lot of those burdens off. There's so many unknowns, and estate planning allows us to plan as much as we can and have as much possible solidified, even though there's still going to be parts of that we're not going to be sure of.
It's brilliant. It's
Yeah.
very good to be able to see both sides of the coin like that.
Yeah,
Very
absolutely.
So, and Nevada's unique.
Yeah, so Nevada's unique. It has the asset protection laws here are fantastic.
Freaking awesome.
Yeah, they're the best in the country. We always tell clients we think you're here because we're so good, but really the law in Nevada is fantastic. And so we help families from all over the country, all over the world even, with their estate planning because there's so many things that you can do to protect your wealth. And it's not a matter of getting out of, obligations that you have, but it's more being proactive with the way that you shield yourself against potential creditors or even bankruptcies, things like that can happen that are unexpected, but often affect, entrepreneurs, general contractors, educators, families, doctors. I mean, there's so many professions now where liability becomes a huge part of how we practice. Yeah. And so it helps them protect and be able to grow. And two, it helps them be better at their own jobs because they can be comfortable in the work that they're doing. And we don't have as many people that are like, I just can't do this anymore because of the liability. They're able to kind of protect and build up their walls a little bit.
Yeah, that's smart. And plan accordingly. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting for those who don't know what this is. This is like classic like trust and estates rhetoric or legal jurisprudence, right? But this idea of the rule against perpetuities, for example, right? Like Nevada has a pretty unique.
Yeah, Nevada says 365 years.
Can you explain the rule?
Yeah, so the way that the rule against perpetuities works, it is one of those like common law phrases. Yeah. So it's how long a trust can exist after the death of the trustor, the person who established the trust. Mm-hmm. In some states, it's as low as 21 years. Well, you think about it, you died, you have little kids, that can really impact your estate planning. Sure. But in Nevada, it's 365 years. And so that's where we're really able to do that generational wealth and help families provide. And it's not, when we think about generational wealth, I think we get stuck thinking of manors and, things like that. It's not really meant for that. It's more, how can I make sure that whether I just have a simple life insurance policy and a couple of kids, that they're able to use that money for their education. Sure. And it doesn't get wasted by their guardians if I die young. Or how can I make sure that I can preserve this family home that my kids have such great memories in, and I want them to be able to return here without their spouses talking them out of it, right? I mean, there's some really basic things that happen, but again, it's about building that sense of community even within our families and those ties that just take us back to those values that help us, navigate life.
Yeah, I love that. So rule against perpetuities is a wonderfully high thing here.
Yep, absolutely.
And there's also been a tremendous amount of business relocation recently. There's been a lot of businesses that have been leaving New York, California.
Yeah, everyone's coming to Nevada. So
why do you think that is?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with state income tax, right? Okay. So as residents, we don't pay state income tax. So we naturally get a high population of retirees who are just looking, to make it through, especially in today's economy. I think retiring is even harder. So every little bit helps. We get a lot of people even from Hawaii. Las Vegas is known as the ninth island because we get a lot of people that transfer from there.
Aloha.
Yes, yeah. Where they're able to then, kind of maximize what they have for their retirement. And I think it's great. It just, again, helps build that community. And it gives Nevada kind of a different color than maybe it had before, where now it is becoming more of a retirement community. And it's a lot more than just what you find on the Strip.
Yeah, for sure. I hear that. Well, and it's also interesting because, you have the decision like the one that came out in Delaware against Elon Musk, and he was forced to give back or disgorge. What was it, close to several $1 billion worth of executive compensation and pay. And Delaware I was always taught Delaware was like the gold standard for these corporations and trusts and things like that to set up that wealth protection. And they just basically like took the foundation out from underneath it. It's like now a sandcastle falling over into the Delaware.
Well, it always kind of cracks me up because I think, why are now these other states catching on and just making their limits better?
Right.
But for whatever reason, they're not. And so we get a lot of that back, that overfull. But I like it because, like I said, we're able to help families. It's a really unique situation. And I mean, the best part, whether we're doing special ed advocacy or, whether I'm practicing as an estate planning attorney, is having people come in with these insurmountable problems and being able to kind of classify them, help them sort it all out, and come up with a plan that's going to work no matter what else happens. And just having that sense of peace, right? I mean, we can't control everything, but when we control what we can, we'll feel so much better about whatever the outcome might be.
Yeah, I love that. It's interesting too, because I think that we grew up at a time when there was this push for attorneys to focus and become experts in areas. But you're an example of someone who, for lack of a better term, is kind of like a Renaissance person. I think David's the same way. I like to think of myself the same way, but it's where you're willing to say, hey, I'm going to understand different verticals, and then I'm going to try and bridge those areas to come up with a more holistic, a more beneficial perspective of how the law really works, of how we can really navigate these things. Instead of just being a surgeon and saying, let's cut, I can say, no, well, there's this option, this option, this option, let's pick the best one. Do you feel like you've always been like that? Where you've always...
Yeah, and I think that's been a really big part of our planning. You know, we always tell clients, we're going to kind of give you the good, better, best scenario, whether you've got, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars or, like I said, just a little bit of equity in your first house, so you can decide what steps you want to take. And it goes back to empowering people, right? Yeah. So here are different solutions. Here's pros and cons of each of those solutions. And then you can decide what you're comfortable doing. And when you give people ownership of their own estate plans, I think it helps them feel in control. They can pull out the documents. They know what they say. They know what's going to happen. You know, it's gotten to the point where with so many of our, frankly, competitors, I can see by who drafted the trust. I already know what it says before I even open it.
Really?
And the client will be like, no, it doesn't. It doesn't say that. And I'm like, I guarantee you, when I open this, it's going to say X, Y, and Z.
Really?
You pull it open, and there it is, right? And they're always like, ah.
Is that like,
because they draft them the same,
yeah.
right? And so they're not applying them individually to the people. And what's more frustrating is having someone, especially an older person, come in and they're so frustrated because they can't figure out where it says, I thought it said somewhere in here that this child gets this, but I can't find it, right? And helping them sort through and figure out what the information says. And it's about accessibility. It's about making that information accessible to them in a way that they can clearly understand. I don't know, we always had professors in law school say, you should explain everything like you're explaining it to your 10-year-old nephew, right? Yeah. And so if you really understand something, you can explain it in very basic terms. And I think it's not dumbing it down, it's making it accessible to everybody.
Yes.
And the more you teach it, right, and a lot of law is teaching, the more you teach it, the better you're able to teach it, because the better you understand it for yourself.
Yeah, well, you clearly have a lot of experience with that. So I want to turn to you personally now just for a little bit. So I'm sure you're doing a lot. You're juggling kids, you know, practice of law, all that kind of fun stuff, working in the temple, all these awesome things. What do you do to stay centered yourself?
Probably like the most dysfunctional person you've ever met. I'm glad that everyone thinks I'm centered. But
I mean, I look over in the temple and you're like calm and relaxed.
You didn't see me like angrily texting my 10-year-olds on the way over. No, I don't think anybody has it figured out.
Sure.
I will say for me, my faith, and especially my relationship with my family, with my husband, is what really keeps me grounded. And just having that strong connection. You know, it's helpful to know you've got somebody that always has your back, right? Yeah. That knows everything, that is going to have your back no matter what, that'll kind of tease me out of whatever fit I'm throwing. And then two, to me, I really enjoy staying physically active. That's a big part of it for me.
It's critical. It's essential. Yeah.
I was just telling my husband, actually, I was commenting on how I just really like to run, even though I'm not a great runner. And he said, you were like the worst runner I've ever seen. And I was like, what? And he's like, if I see you running down the street, I feel embarrassed for you a little bit. And I was like, oh, come on, man. But you know what? It doesn't matter. It's something that's just for me, that I enjoy. I like vlogging my little time and seeing if I can get a little bit faster. I am probably the world's slowest runner. But I realized that, to me, the key for happiness is I can't always go on some fancy trip or, you know, have a kid-free week or do these things that require a lot of planning, but it's finding those simple little joys in every single day, right? Things that are always accessible to me, that don't depend on anyone else, that just make me feel happy, right? Yeah. And so that help me find that fulfillment. And, you know, I think one of my proudest mom moments was just last week, my daughter is serving a mission in Argentina.
Oh, cool.
And she was telling me that one of her companions on our mission, you know, they have a lot of rules and they're really restricted in a lot of ways. Yeah, very much. And she said, and she's a trainer, and she was a sister training leader, and she was telling one of the girls that she's over was saying, I just am really struggling to feel happy. And she said, I told her, Mom, you have to find something in every day that just helps you feel happy, something simple. And I was like, oh, that's what I taught you, right? And so it is. Sometimes it's a cold glass of water. Sometimes it is, you know, a run. Sometimes it's just reading a couple chapters out of a book. But having something that's accessible to you, that's yours, I think is so important, just to help people feel grounded and connected and all those things.
Yeah, moments of gratitude that you can
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Okay, that's wonderful. So I won't ask you what your favorite mantra is, but do you have like a favorite saying, or do you have a favorite mantra? Like,
I don't really know that I do. I think like I said, to me, it's just finding happiness in like the small and simple things. I think is so important.
That's a rule you live by.
Yeah, absolutely. It's finding those little things that make me happy and make me feel good and help me just feel centered and connected to the world around me.
I love that. I think there's a lot of truth in that.
Yeah.
So one of the other things I love asking anybody that comes on is what do they believe? Now, I know that we've talked a little bit about what's motivating you and some of your whys about why you went and pursued education and all these things that you've been doing. But what are some of the fundamental beliefs that really drive Katie?
Honestly, I feel like probably my most fundamental belief is that there's life after death and that what we're doing here isn't just reflected in our time here.
Which is a really cool thing for a trust and estates attorney.
Yeah, it is, right? And it's kind of funny because I can't tell you how many times we've been able to kind of sit with families and comfort them. Because a lot of what we do, I mean, people that I know die every day now, right? We've been doing this for so long. We've got thousands of clients. And so someone that I know or have helped dies every day. And
like literally
every day.
Wow.
I will hear about someone that died that I knew. And so, I mean, it's sometimes we consider it a privilege to be able to sit down with those families, and sometimes we're the first ones that they call, especially older couples that may not have a lot of family around, and they'll come in and they're really dependent on us to give them maybe that comfort and perspective that no one else has yet. And so it really is a sacred opportunity to sit down with them and, to really bear testimony to them that you believe in life after death. And I know that this isn't the end. And I know they're in a better place and that you'll be there, with them again. And so it really, I mean, it's a very solemn thing. And it's a really special opportunity to help families kind of connect and see more the eternal perspective. And even if their beliefs don't align with mine, I think helping them through those times and offering that perspective gives people hope, right? And it circles back to, even special education. And I think every parent that's had a child with a diagnosis knows what it feels to kind of sit in that and just wonder and worry about where it's going to take them, and having that hope that they can do things to help their child progress and just to help their child reach their biggest potential, I think just says a lot to them, right? It gives people a lot of peace.
Yeah. That's remarkable. So you believe in life after death?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's, if it helps us realize that, like I said, it's not just about what we're doing here and now, that there's more to this. Yeah. And that gives me, I think, the perspective to push forward and to strengthen those relationships in my life and try to be hopefully a better person.
Yeah, and I agree with that, and be present. About a year ago, I think I told you I got diagnosed with brain tumors.
Yeah.
And lots of miracles, lots of moments where, to me, it became very clear that God is real, angels are real. There are people watching us.
Absolutely.
And I have a belief that when we walk off the stage of life into the theater of those angels that are around us, it really is like that. Like, there have been people that have been watching us our whole lives that we maybe don't remember, that have come before us or are going to come after us, and they've been cheering us on, celebrating, and also probably sorrowing with us. And we'll walk off stage and into the next life, and we'll look around and we'll laugh because we'll recognize them, not just because we know them, but also because they look a lot like us.
Yeah.
Very similar. Hey, you have my nose.
Yeah.
Or you have my ears, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's going to be part of the experience.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Well, so do you feel like that most people, when they're going through this estate planning process, or they're confronting this difficulty of this new burden and responsibility, also blessing of taking care of a child with special needs, do you feel like that most people have that type of anchor where they can go to some type of faith, or they can go to some type of belief that helps them through that?
I think everyone finds it if they don't have it, to be honest.
Really?
Because I think it kind of helps them just come to terms with the situation that they're in. Whether they think it's random or not, I think helping them, like I said, I think it kind of goes back to that empowerment, helping empower them that they can make a difference in this situation and kind of find traction is helpful no matter the circumstance that they find themselves in. People that don't have that anchor, I think, I don't know, I kind of think everyone does somewhere
Really?
within them.
Yeah.
Whether or not they really want to talk about it or not. But
Do you think most people just, if they say they don't, it's just because they've tried to hide from it?
I do. That's like my own personal feeling. I think most people have that kind of inner sense, right, of right from wrong and that there's something more out there. And I think that's something that we kind of play to, in education, in religion, certainly in estate planning, right? One of the kind of awkward things that we do is a lot of times if a client comes in and they want to disinherit a child, there's something that's gone wrong and they don't want this child yet. They want them out. Is the thing that just breaks my heart is a lot of times they'll feel like they'll say, well, let me tell you why. And they want to explain why they're doing this. And the thing I always tell them, whether or not they get through their explanation or not, is you don't have to explain it to me. Like, I understand there's a lot that goes behind that. And I understand that this isn't an easy decision that you've come to.
Yeah.
But they want kind of that reassurance that this is an okay decision to make based on these circumstances, right? Which are different for everyone. And so, but it's definitely giving me this broader perspective of we all have kind of a value system, and maybe even if mine doesn't line up with them, we all need that reassurance that we're doing the best that we can, right? And I think as we get that reassurance that we're doing the best that we can, we find in that the motivation to push ourselves forward and become more than we were.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, and I didn't even think of that. I'm sure that people come to you and almost look at you as not only a lawyer, but someone who understands what's right and wrong.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. That's the thing I actually hate, because I don't want them to think like you don't have to impress me. You don't have to tell me like this is the reason and I don't like this or that. And I will offer my opinion if it's asked for, or explain my thoughts or feelings on it. But I want them to feel confident in the decision they're making for themselves, right?
Sure.
And so if they don't, then I want to help them figure out a little bit more like, okay, is this really resonating with you, or what do we need to do? One thing I always tell clients is if they're struggling with a decision is write it down and then go to bed. And the next morning, if it's not the first thing you think of, then it's probably the right decision, right? Because when we make good decisions, we kind of stop thinking about them. And so, I try to help them kind of work through those things the best that I can, just based on my experience and what I've seen with clients over the years.
It's a good trick. It's a very good trick.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, as someone who has done a lot of thinking and has continued to push for being a better person, we view certain people that we interview as I like to refer to them as human lightsabers. They're people who like create light, generate light, try and help other people find the way to the light. What do you feel like you do that is the most impactful for people to help them find that light?
I don't know. It feels like a big responsibility. I would hope
you're doing it.
I would hope that it would be. Let me think about that. I would hope that it would be that sense of empowerment, that people can change their futures and that they can be responsible for themselves. Yeah. I know one thing that I try to do a lot with my kids is when they're making good choices, whether it's they clean up their room or they're doing something nice for someone else, or they're just being responsible, is to ask them and help them reflect on how they feel, right? So how do you feel now that your room is cleaned up? Do you feel better? Yeah, I feel better. Okay, why do you think that is? Well, I think because it's, easier for me to concentrate. I know where all my stuff is. Okay, so what does that mean? How do we push that forward into other areas of your life? And so to really help, at least, I think about it kind of on that smaller scale of my family, hopefully develop those skills that they can turn to and kind of write their own course, right? And I think it does. It comes full circle, whether it's helping an IEP team look at the law and kind of get themselves back to basics, or helping a family kind of focus on the things we can change compared to the things that we can't. I think that's, it has a lot to do with it, which is with life and being able to move forward, like you said.
Yeah, I love that. But we have these little things that we give out to people just to say thanks.
No.
We'll give you a couple more than this,
so fun.
But they're little lightsabers that light up, and this one's pink.
That's cute. Perfect. Just what I wanted. Thank you. That's so fun.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and that's what's so cool is I think that I've known about you for a long time. I've heard your name several times, and I think it's because you are radiating that light. You are doing things to help other people and help them create light. Just like the Savior told us to do, Christ told us to do in Matthew, where he's like, hold high your light. And I think it points people to God and to good and to all the wonderful things that make America America. And so thanks for being you.
Thank you. Thanks for the ego boost, I guess.
Thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you.